First of all, what's your beef with Logic, man? Why you
Yo,
always
man,
hating on Logic?
listen, man.
I think hip hop will always be a voice for the people.
Reggie Williams,
Jake Payne, what's happening, man?
how are you?
I'm doing all right, man. How you doing?
Doing well, man. Doing well. You're the, I'm trying to think of a punchline. You're the latest man since, give me the punchline.
Since, I don't know, Post Malone, I don't know.
Word. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
man. It's all good,
uh,
man.
I had my second cup of coffee in the last 5 months today, man.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Damn. All right. That's going to be like Sean Penn and Carlito's Way. You're going to be bouncing off the walls.
Yeah, this is me in hype mode.
Yeah. Word. Okay. This is good. This is good because we haven't done one of these in, I can't remember if it's 3 or 4 weeks. We've had a lot of interviews, a couple of them since then, but we have a lot to talk about.
We got a lot to talk about. First of all, I told my guy I wanted a double espresso, and he was like, "You want what kind of milk do you want in it?" Then he was like, "Do you want water in it?" And he's like, "Yo, that's it, because he didn't know that double espresso was just a little bit of coffee. So I don't know.
Oh, well, oh, so you did the concentrated. So, you know.
Yeah.
All right.
I go hard. I don't go at all, man.
No bathroom breaks then. All right, cool.
No bathroom breaks. Yeah. So I'm Reggie Williams, founder and CEO of Ambrosia for Heads. With me is Jake Payne. Together, we are
What's the
Ambrosia
headline?
for Heads.
Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. Both those things. Oh, man. So, Lord Finesse and Duckworth.
Yeah, two different sides of hip hop, but two highly musical dudes, and really conversations that I'm proud of for this podcast.
Yeah, man. I enjoyed both. You know, the Duckworth one was really cool. I like talking to artists at that kind of like beginning stage. You know what I mean? Not to say beginning, because like he said, he's been in the game for like 8 years or so. But like at that stage when they're really about to blow. You know what I mean? It's just a different kind. It's amazing to be connected and watch that rise so close. You know.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. Duckworth is somebody that's on a lot of folks' radar. You know, he's been on the Marvel soundtracks, does crazy numbers on Spotify. But I feel like for meat and potatoes hip hop fans, he might not be on their radar. And that's what's so great about our conversation. And it's funny, you have, Finesse, who's truly, I mean, when it comes to witticisms in rap, he's definitely, I put him up there with his protege and disciple, Big L. Like, Finesse always made me laugh. He had such an ill style. And I love that he kind of told us that his rapping days are far from over. He's got some things in the tuck. Because great producer, great DJ. The Motown remixes were, I've really been enjoying that. But I want to get some more bars from Finesse.
Yeah, man. He was his punchlines were crazy back in the day. I met a dude last night, 30-year-old dude from Carson. Super up on Av Soul and all the TDE dudes, but interestingly did not know Reason, which I thought was surprising. But he knew Duckworth. And when he found out that we had connected with Duckworth, he was like actually very hyped about that. So it's cool.
That's cool. Yeah, great conversations.
Yeah. So this week has been a big week in hip hop, like you said. I think one of the biggest moments obviously came on Wednesday was just like a double header, but the first of that was Snoop versus DMX. Did you watch the battle?
I did. I tuned in throughout. I had some stuff going on Wednesday night, and these really warrant undivided attention, especially the battles of this caliber. So I made sure to watch it in the, I watched it in full later on. And I know you were tuned in live because you were texting me.
Yeah, man. I was excited for that one like no other since like Jill Scott versus Erykah Badu.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the second one I've watched in its entirety, But what did you who did you think took it first of all?
I have it as Snoop 11-9, possibly 12-9. If you really look at it, there's kind of like 21 rounds. I know there were some, blends and little intros and things like that, but it was close. And I'm a huge fan of both of these guys. They're both artists that have made me consistently at various points in their career, get to the record store on Tuesday as they open up to buy what they had to say.
Yeah.
Who did you have winning?
You know, I definitely had it at Snoop. I probably would have put it more in the 12-8 range, or like maybe even 13-7. You know,
Okay.
I'm a gigantic Snoop fan. You know, I've said in the past that I like these better when they do it remotely, but this one I thought was much better because they were together. You know, just the love they show one another.
Yeah.
You know, just like, you know, watching Snoop do the ad libs for DMX, and, you know, then both hyping each other up, and then at the end, the freestyle session.
Yeah.
First of all, it wasn't fair because X, you know, I know that DMX was a supreme battler back in the day. You know, we've heard those stories about him and Jay, you know, legendary battles and things like that. But Snoop, man, is a world class freestyler. People do not like give that dude the props that he deserves. Like, we've seen him like the Swing in the Morning
Yeah.
joint that he did with Jamie Foxx, where he came up with a full blown song
Yeah.
impromptu. Yo, so going up top against that dude is real. Like, I mean, I'd love to see him and KRS battle like that. But DMX
Yeah.
is not he's not an off the top freestyler anymore, it seems, because he was struggling a bit with that. But Snoop was
Yeah.
just so cold with it.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, this was great to be in the same room. I think that was Snoop's studio in LA, if I'm not mistaken. And this one was the most produced that I've seen. Like, it, there had to have been, I mean, obviously, you know, Swizz is one half of Versus, him and Timberland. And, you know, Swizz has been not only in X's corner, you know, X in a lot of ways put Swizz on, but not for nothing. I mean, starting with It's Dark and Hell is Hot with Rough Riders Anthem, like, Swizz has supplied DMX some of his most memorable songs and really came up off the strength of that. But so that being said, I feel like this was an important milestone in part of a 2 or 3 year DMX comeback. But the fact that you have like, what's my name? What's my name? Like, I don't think that these decisions were made on the fly. I feel like the set list was largely predetermined. Routines were put together. Like, this was a concert to me. And not for nothing, I mean, I didn't realize this actually until several days after, but this broke the Versus record.
Did it?
For most streams, yeah, the numbers are, based on Billboard reported this, 1.75 billion impressions. Now, mind you,
Wait,
impressions,
billion?
yes,
Billion?
yes.
Billion.
That's, now mind you, again, impressions. That's not streams.
Okay, yeah,
That's,
but still, but like, I mean,
this is a shot heard around the world. Yeah, and again, that's Billboard. That's, you know, that's a pretty damn trustworthy source. It broke the Apple, you know, the Apple live stream platform's record for something of this type. And from what I read in Billboard, it broke the Versus record, which is
yeah,
nuts on a Wednesday night as we're now in, you know, dog days of summer, pun intended.
yeah. It's again just a testament to, like, you know, what Swiss Beats and Tim have done for the culture. I mean, they've literally created a new form of entertainment, and to have that kind of cultural impact is insane. Yeah, I was watching it live. It was, you couldn't tell that on IG, because on IG I
Yeah.
think the highest it got was like
That's
500,000
what I saw.
concurrents or something like that.
Yeah.
I know Swiss was saying during the actual broadcast that they had reached like 2.2, 2.7 million, and I took that to be uniques across other platforms. So to have that many impressions, I'm guessing that means social media
Yeah.
and, like, you know, like IG like mentions and stuff like that, which I can see that, you know.
But still, like, probably your mom and my mom know that this happened. They didn't tune in live, but they saw about it
Yeah.
on some morning show, you know, Good Morning
Um,
America or something.
Not my mom. I'm not sure your mom be like. You know? So, but to your point, man, the set list did feel very intentional,
Yeah.
and I loved how Snoop, at least, and maybe X too, but very much went in chronological order. You know, it's kind of retrospective of his career. You know,
Yeah.
starting out with like Deep Covers, like, ooh, I mean, you know, and you
Yeah.
know, you just think about all the different phases he had with, like, you know, the early stripped down Dre, to the more melodic stuff that came with the G Funk era,
Yep.
to like the, you know, the Master P era, No Limit, and then
Pharrell and G
Pharrell.
Unit. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he was, you know, it was dope.
And still left songs on the table. I mean, you know, in Snoop's case, didn't do Sexual Seduction. I mean, he did do Beautiful. or sexual, whatever the name of the record is on, we all know what it is, but,
Yeah.
Left that back, and that probably wasn't the venue for it, but he was willing to do some of the quote unquote, girl records or relationship songs, as did X,
Yeah.
Great, Swizz, Battle Cat, were accoutrements to the presentation. It was just really good. And uh, several months ago, you and I spoke on here, and I didn't know that Versus would kind of go much beyond quarantine. And now I think that this is really here to stay, and this is a high level of entertainment. And what I really hope too is, these are two active artists, and I hope that it's really interesting to see the records that they chose, because it's wild for me to see their understanding of their own impact. There were deep cuts in here. Pump Pump, which is probably, it's my favorite song on Doggy Style, but it's not a record that you're going to hear at a Snoop Dogg concert. It appeared as one of the 21 records, so I love
and
that.
he did a different mix of it too, which was super dope.
Yeah,
and I love the fact that he was actually performing his songs too.
Yeah.
You've said in the past that you thought Versus was over, like you weren't like so keen on it. Did you still feel that way, or do you think with the right lineup?
And by no means do I mean over like I'm poo-pooing it, because even on my social media, which I'm not a heavy social media person, but I'm seeing folks that I don't even have hip hop conversations with that are putting into the universe their opinions on these and celebrating these. It just became something somewhere around June that it wasn't a mark on my calendar. Somewhere around Beanie Man, I was just like, I'm okay to sit this one out. And, there were a lot of technical issues going on. You would tune in on a Saturday night and it would take things an hour. That even happened with Eric and Jill, which I thought was a phenomenal experience. But here we are now in high July, and there's no hiccups really. I mean, this is getting better and better. And I really think that this is going to be an extension of the barbershop or lunch table, or, two folks at a bar debating music. This will live forever. I really hope.
Yeah, I flipped around from platform to platform this time. I started off on IG because I just love watching the comments, and it feels more like a party in there, and like seeing, artists and friends and people like that, like commenting is always fun. But then like midway through, I switched over to Apple Music in the app, and dude, like first of all, like it's a full screen experience, and secondly, the sound is pristine.
Audio.
I mean, it's straight up through the control board. It's full stereo. It sounds amazing. And so I did that for a while, but I was still missing. And they have tweets and stuff like that underneath, but it's not the same. So then I found myself watching on my computer, but I had my IG open on my phone, so I could like follow like comments and stuff. So it's interesting just figuring out how to even experience it.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of people talk about that. I haven't participated in that way. I mostly just there have even been times, and this happened even during Snoop and X, like I was in the car and I would put it on and run it through Bluetooth and just drive and listen. But yeah, I think it really is a 360 of like, there's discourse among the fans.
Yeah. So J versus M, do you think that's a possibility?
I think for M it is. I mean, M has been accessible in a way that he's never been lately. I think his legacy, and we've discussed that a bit on this podcast, I think his legacy is a little bit debated right now. And I feel like M is not getting the flowers he deserves, especially in this chapter of his career. And I feel like something like this could really get him those snaps. Jay, I don't know. I mean, for Jay, it would have to be in a way that really emphasizes title, I think.
Oh yeah. That's true. That's true.
And I'm not ruling that out. I mean, these guys are friends. They obviously did the Home and Away concert series in the last decade. They've worked together.
That, by the way?
I did not. You did, right?
I did, and I was close. I was like 15th row or something like that.
Oh damn, that's a humble brag. Yeah.
Yeah, it was dope. It was super dope.
Yeah, that but yeah, I mean, I could see that happening, and truly, Jay's done interesting things for title in the past, so I could see that happening.
Yeah. So later on that night, J. Cole released 2 new songs. You sent me one as Song of the Day.
Yeah.
Dude, like I thought that those 2 songs were two of Cole's best in years. And, you know, I'm a huge Cole fan, so I mean, like, but this dude, like, you know, the climb back was just insane.
That's the one.
And Lion King on Ice was dope too, but like the climb back, just the things that he's saying, he's just going in. Like, I don't know, man. Cole is, you know, people always say Kendrick, Drake, and Cole, but I always feel like kind of Cole is like that, like 1A, or, you know, instead of it with Drake and Kendrick being 1 and 1, you know, Drake on the
Mm.
hit side and Kendrick on the artistic side. But man, I think it's a full blown equal trinity at this point. You know, three kings.
Yeah, I could see that. You know, I've become a much bigger J. Cole fan later in his career. I was not the biggest. I was tuned into the mixtapes. I got to know J. Cole for a brief point in, you know, 2009, 2010, as he kind of moved into albums. But I never thought his first album measured up to what he was capable of. And he said similar things. And then I really think somewhere around um, started to take shape at Born Sinner, but really, you know, was
Forest
it
Hills Drive.
2014 Forest Hills
Yeah.
Drive is where, yo, like, and really you and Amanda and some other folks in the AFH fold at the time really had me going back to that album in the coming months and years. So yeah, I think this is interesting. I mean, you and I on this podcast, I think we offered some interesting perspective on J. Cole a couple, you know, I would say within the last month and a half over this issue with No Name. And what I found is you and I processed it differently than a lot of the vocal. I don't know if it's majority or minority, but I think that in 2020, it's the closest thing that J. Cole's ever done to taking an L. I don't know if you would agree or not.
Nah, I would say I think the closest he came to taking an L was around KOD. Just like the pushback he got from a younger generation, and not from like Cole fans, but
Right.
from a generation. Like he got called out like tremendously on that album. I don't agree with it, but I would
Right.
think the
Yeah.
noise was louder around that than it was
Well,
around.
that's a good point. I mean, you know, Little Pump and Smoke Perp, you know, they were leading the pack, and they admitted they used their own words, trolling him. But then you had folks like YBN Corday, who wasn't in his prime yet, who raised a really good point when the record that he released, you know, old cats, or, you know, I'm paraphrasing the title. But yeah, I mean, Cole looked low earlier this year with this, and I feel like the climb back is a direct answer to that. I mean, not only is it real time rapping about what's going on, but it's also like, oh, I'm gonna give it to you. And that was tremendous. That was great. And it's interesting too. I mean, you know, I know later in the conversation, I think we want to talk about where projects are, but this isn't just a typical 2-pack. This is, you know, he called it Lewis Street. It's 2 songs, and it seems deliberate. Like it's not just I'm going to give you 2 records at once. This is a pivot point in his discography, which I find interesting.
Yeah, do you know what Lewis Street is? You know what that's a reference to?
I don't, apart from Warren G records, but as far as J. Cole, I really don't. Do you?
Nah, I don't. I'm gonna check it out. But I was thinking about the 2-pack too. Like this is now twice in 2 weeks that two artists of that caliber have come up with like you said, what feel like projects, right? Not like
Yeah.
mini projects. Because Joey Badass came up with his like you know, just like a week before that, and his was 3 songs, all of which were also really really you know, I think stellar, and some of Joey's best work in a minute. His is called the Light Pack. He's got the light, no explanation, and shine on it. And shine, you put me on with that Roy Ayers sample. You
Yeah.
know, everybody loves the sunshine. What do you think? Do you think that this is the model that should go forward? Like, you know, it's hard for me to sit down now and devote 30 or 40 to 60 minutes to a project in one setting. You know, I just don't have the time. But if it's 2 or 3 songs, or even like what Kanye was doing back, you know, 2 years ago with the 7 song joints that are like 20 minutes, I'm all in, and I find myself listening to those projects over and over again. You know, so I'm a big fan of this, and I know. So the J. Cole is, you know, supposedly the first 2 releases off his, you know,
The fall
the
off.
fall off, which he says is coming with no timetable. But I'm almost like, do you really need to do that? Just like release them in dribs and drabs as it goes.
I mean, J. Cole, along with the two artists you mentioned, Kendrick and Drake, leads the class. And I feel like these guys love hip hop so much. They love music so much. They love long forms of expression that they'll keep it going. But this is another, tool in the artist's belt. Like, we've seen a resurgence of EPs in recent years. The pack thing is just interesting to me. And I like it when I like the fact that you and I are sitting here trying to figure out what Lewis Street means, trying to analyze the title. And it's more than just like, I'm going to give you two songs at once. And the weird thing is, Lion King on Ice and The Climb Back, these are not necessarily two songs that sound great back to back. It's almost like two different speeds within his repertoire. But to answer your question, I really do, but I don't think the album is completely bygone. But it amazes me, to your point, my favorite project, I believe, of 2018 was Pusha T's Daytona. 9 or 10 songs, very short. I knew that album so well. And here we are in 2020. My favorite album so far is Royce's album, The Allegory. And I'm still pairing titles with the way that I know the album. Like it's 3 times the length of Pusha T's project. And that does come as a detriment to artists. You just can't get familiar with the time that we have, even in quarantine, with these longer albums.
Yeah, I don't think that the album is a bygone product, but I do think that artists should not feel compelled to do them. I think certain artists just have not proven to be great at making albums. Like Drake, for example. Drake has, maybe 1 or 2 like great albums, but he has probably 100 great songs. And I think that it's okay for artists like that to just do things as they come, make playlists, be part of like other guests, other artists, projects, things like that. And if they have a real theme, a real like vision, they need to articulate over several songs. Is I think the only time you truly need to make an album. And I think Kendrick is like that. I do think Cole fits in that category a lot of times.
Kendrick hasn't used that though. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you, but what's interesting
No, I'm saying as an album.
Word, yeah.
Yeah. Kendrick is an album artist.
Right.
I think Cole is generally an album artist. KOD was we knew the theme throughout, and he like touched on it in different ways throughout. There are very few artists who can actually like communicate a thread throughout 10 songs or more.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that with the artists who can. It's almost like off the top freestyle versus like written freestyle. Your talents are what they are.
So as we discussed this, you texted me this week of something that I didn't even know happened. So Rhapsody, she is a high caliber artist, and an artist who's proven at least twice, I would say 3 times, that she can carry a full album project. That's not even acknowledging her mixtapes. But, she re-released a lot of songs this week as a project, which I have to feel fits snugly into this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, the title, I think, says it all. It's too lyrical. And that to me was a jab, because her album was overlooked. Wasn't nominated for a Grammy. Layla's Wisdom was. That was another phenomenal album, and not taking away from it, but I think we both believe that Eve was better. I believe that Eve was Rhapsody's best work, and that's saying a lot, because her body work is really, really strong.
Yeah.
And yet it got no accolades. It really kind of came and went in the ether. It was really kind of surprisingly overlooked by most when you and I had it in our top 2 of the year in 2020 or 2019. So I think that she's saying, look, I must be too lyrical for you guys. Like, you must not understand it. So let me give you another shot. Here's another bite at the apple. And Eve, right? Another bite at the apple.
Yeah.
Like,
word. I didn't even put that together.
I just did. Like, that's the espresso. That's that double espresso kicking in, baby.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that was it, man. I'm actually going to reach out to her ninth later on and find out. But it would not surprise me if that's what they were thinking.
That's interesting. I mean, I remember, as we talk about DMX, I believe it was Irv Gotti at Def Jam in the early 2099, 2000. I don't know if you remember this. Def Jam tried this thing out for like a year called the 7 Series. Do you remember that? And they would, I mean, this was in the era of buying CDs, but they would take the 7 biggest songs on an album and sell it at a $9.99 or a $7.99 price. And they were doing it a lot with DMX, Ja Rule, maybe Cameron, like that Y2K era. And, you know, maybe they were ahead of their time with this. So it's interesting that Rhapsody picked the songs that she did and re-released them. I still would encourage, if this is your entry point, cool. But Eve needs to be listened to in the sequence it is and in full. And that album, maybe like Royce, I mean, we'll see, is dense and it's deserving. And it's hard to get your flowers in this era when, you know, people are dropping 5 songs, 21 minutes.
So let me ask you this. Have you ever seen a greater celebration of women in a body of work in hip hop than Eve?
I mean, armchair answer, no. And you know, even Queen Latifah, I don't think at an album level devoted the theme to as much real estate as Rhapsody did. Is there something I'm missing that you're remembering?
No, and I'm wondering if that might play a part in it. You know, society in general has proven to be very misogynistic. You know, we still haven't had a woman president, even though women are the majority of people in this country. You know, I think that's a lot of the reason why Hillary Clinton lost. Is it possible that the project wasn't too lyrical, but it was, you know, about women, and that's just repudiated in hip hop?
And to me, especially when it came to the Grammys, at least in the damn nominations, I thought that would win. I mean, you know, I know the Chronic never won a Grammy, but you have the Chronic come, you know, post LA riots. And, you know, there's certain times that hip hop lines up really well with what's going on in the world. And this was, you know, Eve did that on a gender and sex level. And I thought that was so phenomenal, on top of its own just artistic merits. And it just, you know, we celebrated it. Some other publications and media and fans and podcasts did, but that didn't transfer to the mainstream and to the greater criticism community. And that's just a shame. Truly, that was, you know, up there with, you know, Macklemore winning rap out, you know, with Macklemore's kind of dominance of Kendrick in, what was that, 2014.
So crazy. It is when you look back and think about that album beating Good Kid, Mad City.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, truthfully, like, who's going to be listening? And dude, like, you know, I was supportive of both of those dudes extremely early in their careers, both on AFH, but also on BET. And I think I gave both of them their first TV looks. So no shade toward Macklemore at all.
Right.
But who is going to look back on that album, you know, in 3 years when it's 10 years old, you know, versus like Good Kid, Mad City, and think that it was remotely in the same stratosphere? Like nobody,
Right.
nobody.
So as we talk,
go
ahead.
But you talked about, you said something interesting. You talked about like with hip hop kind of aligning with what's going on in the world. And you were on this before I was. You know, I truthfully didn't listen to the whole project until Friday, but Run the Jewels 4. You know, Killer Mike and LP did an interview with the Breakfast Club, and I watched it in its entirety. You know, hour and 12 minutes. I did it while I was working out. I worked out longer than I would have, so I could finish like looking at it. You know, I love Mike's perspective. LP also has an incredibly unique, interesting perspective. But when you talk about aligning with what's going on in the world, man, just hearing those guys talk and the way they address it in their music is phenomenal. So I want to revisit that album a little bit. You know, you had said that before. Can you expand on what you thought it brought to the table?
Yeah, I mean, you know, when it dropped in, I guess, late May or June, I mean, there's even references on Mike's part to I Can't Breathe, which, you know, there's no way that that's about George Floyd. I mean, tragically, it's, you know,
it's a recurring thing.
Yeah. And from disenfranchise, from lack of harmony with government or lack of support, especially in disenfranchised communities, to police brutality, to this overall sense of You know, where do we as people fit in? You know, black folks, white folks, young folks. There's all of that. And then there's this underlying theme. I mean, you talk about Song of the Day. In the last few weeks, the album closes with, and again, this is a product of titles, but it's something Shooting Gallery, you know, and it ends, and it's basically this song of both guys look at, like, if these are my final words, what are they going to be? And, you know, LP addresses his sister, Mike addresses, you know, his family, and it's really beautiful. And to me, that lines up with how I'm looking at the world right now. Like, damn, these are really uncertain times, and we don't know if, you know, the city I live in is going to burn down, or if, you know, we're going to get hit with a missile, or, you know, really jarring kind of negative thoughts. And that album hones it all in with, of course, the Run the Jewels sound, which is just as jarring, just as uneasy, but it's still jams, just like hip hop. You know, that's why I really see them as, you know, in a lot of ways, like the closest thing to a second coming of Public Enemy, you know.
Yeah, did you watch the interview? Did you get a chance to see it?
That I did not. No, and I want to, especially after what you're telling me.
So there are a few things, you know. First of all, just even on your Public Enemy analogy, like you know, they kind of go through the history, and Charlemagne asks him about LP about producing R.A.P. Music, and you know, Mike says explicitly that he wanted his Ice Cube meeting the Bomb Squad experience. That's what they both wanted, and that's what they aspired to do, and I think they accomplished it with R.A.P. Music. So that's one. They talked about Yankee and the Brave, and how you know, Mike is basically in a standoff. Like, he's been, like, you know, profiled and you know, mistreated by the police, and he's basically in a shootout with them. And he talks, you know, in the interview about how, you know, he would rather go out on his own terms, because the song ends with him, like, he's got one bullet, and he can either, like, you know, use it to, like, kill the cops, or put it in between his eyes and his words. And he's about to start blasting. You know, LP comes to the, you know, the rescue, and they talk about how the symbolism of that is twofold. One, it is not succumbing to, not going out like a coward in these situations. And, you know, he talks about Ahmaud Arbery and how he fought literally to the death, you know, and, you know, how others have done that. But it also talks about how this is more complex than a race issue, because it's a white man that comes and helps Mike escape, you know, and we've seen a lot of solidarity like that in this latest movement. And so that's another instance of them kind of foreseeing what's going on before it happened. You know, another thing is the song Just, and they talk about the fact that, you know, the song with Pharrell, and they talk about the fact that, you know, we believed that this is a meritocracy, and that capitalism will allow for those, you know, who work hard enough to rise and so forth, but we don't acknowledge the systemic, you know, racism embedded in capitalism, and it's right there in front of our faces, because the notes of tender that we worked so hard for literally have the faces of slave masters on them, you know, and so we're slaves to that capital, and the capital system is built on slavery, you know, as it stands. So it's just amazing listening to those guys, you know, talk about these things and break it down.
Where do you think, now that you've had time to sit with the album, where do you think it falls within the RTJ catalog?
Man, I would probably put it at number 2, and that's only on one listen. Like, I think Run the Jewels is 1 for me. I'll put this at 2. 2 would be 3, and 3 would be 4. But I gotta listen to it a little bit more. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's very close to number 1. I think the excitement of the group coming together for RTJ1 was, you know, that was lightning in a bottle, and that's always going to be hard to replicate. This right here is there. The third one I thought was a real, like, they had reached another level, and I saw their very first show on that tour in January of 2017, and it was phenomenal. Like, the energy, completely sold out show. Like, these guys had arrived in a way that astonished me. And I've seen RTJ, I've probably seen them 4 or 5 times live, both in festivals and on their own. The second album, to me, it has some great moments, but I think it's the weakest link. And there's, you know, I totally accept somebody disagreeing with me on that. You know, it's been really, really good to watch these guys mature. I mean, Mike has been on a, you say all that, and then you know, Mike has police officers in his family, and his views on police have always been different than cut and paste, you know, FTP versus, you know, he's never been a huge defender. He's always found the middle. And I love it when Mike has gone on conservative television and represented the hip hop community and our forms of expression. And then recently, you know, Mike gets a lot of credit, and L deserves credit too in his maturity. A few months ago, they put his Fantastic Damage, you know, solo debut from Def Jux on the streaming platforms, and I've spent a lot more time with that album these days in this kind of crazy dystopia than I had when it dropped. And to watch L apologize for some of the things that he's, you know, said, like, you know, dropping the F-bombs, the other F-bombs, and speaking about women in the way that he has, but still you listen to this album, and RTJ, Mike, and L are a natural trajectory of where they were 20 years ago each. So that's just been phenomenal to see, and I'm really happy to hear that you like the album as much as I do.
Yeah, you know, Mike. So Mike, I really like his rapping, and he obviously raps about very deep things. He's not the most technical rapper, you know, just like Chuck D wasn't. You know, I think it's the things that he says and the way that he says it that conveys the power, rather than you know, him being like super lyrically dexterous, like a Kendrick or Royce or someone like that. But I think that the things that he does outside of hip hop make him an even greater rapper. And it's got me thinking about like the role of activism in creating a person's legacy. You know, everyone thinks about Muhammad Ali as being the greatest, you know, in boxing, but you know, you put Muhammad Ali in his prime versus like a Mike Tyson or like you know, a Floyd Mayweather, like beefed up or whatever, you know, I don't know that Muhammad Ali walks away the victor in those, you know, and he wasn't undefeated even in his time, but he's still the greatest. And it's got me thinking about LeBron James because, you know, LeBron, amazing athlete, no one ever deny it. Like, you know, on the court is as gifted as any player that's ever done it. He has not achieved the success that a Michael Jordan has yet, or even a Kobe in terms of like championships. But in watching him, especially over the last few years with the schools that he set up, and now his More Than a Vote initiative, and the way that he is using his press conferences. He did a press conference, his first one since being in the bubble, this week, and all the questions were about the game and everything, but he continued to refocus them on Black Lives Matter and, you know, the movement. And he said it's not a movement. For us, it's a way of life. And just watching him and the way that he is using his platform to advance, you know, social justice, I think is amazing. And I think it's putting him closer in that GOAT conversation. And I've never been one to see that because, you know, MJ 6-0, like, you know, he did what he did on the court. But when you combine impact and influence, and listen, Michael, like, you know, influenced the entire world with his clothing and his demeanor and stuff. But LeBron is using it in a different way. I'm starting to think that GOAT conversation is getting real for him. But what do you think about that notion of like your activism or what you do outside of your craft contributing to how great you are in that craft?
Absolutely. I mean, I wholeheartedly agree. And it's, you know, I was born after Ali's final fight, but, you know, it's hard to hear. You don't hear slander on Muhammad Ali. You might hear people counter that he's not the greatest, but, you know, he's cemented himself. And I think a lot of that is beyond the ring. And I feel like that's true with LeBron. It was very eye-opening. You were the one who really kind of put me on to Shut Up and Dribble, which we've talked about on here before. And it was an illuminating documentary for me, or, you know, docu-series. And yeah, I can never slander LeBron. Like, and every opportunity he gets, like you said with the press conference, he's just doing so much. And to me, it's great to see a hero like that in these days. And, you know, bringing it back to rap too, you know, on sports, like one of my favorite baseball players of all time is Roberto Clemente. He's my favorite player in history. Has played his last game and passed away, you know, 11 years before I was born. And Clemente dies with exactly 3,000 hits, but he dies helping others. You know, he was on a flight that crashed provide relief. And to me, that immortalizes his legacy as not only a diligent athlete on the field, but as a do-gooder. And that's so great to see when, some of our leaders in sports or in arts and culture aren't quite so virtuous. I think the greatest baseball player of all time is Pete Rose. And I think he should be in the Hall of Fame, but Pete Rose, no matter how you dice it, is not a great human being. There's lots of accounts on why he's not. And that has tarnished his legacy. So that speaks to your point too, of if you're not these things, will it ultimately drag you down? But yeah, I mean, I disagree with you a little bit. I think that Killer Mike is an elite MC. And I'm not sure that Run the Jewels always gives him, like, he really plays to the ensemble really well. But if you look throughout his career, Mike has verses that are A+. When I was the editor-in-chief of Hip Hop DX in 2008, which was by no means a banner year for hip hop, but we made his I Pledge Allegiance to the Grind Time the album of the year. And I really think in retrospect, '08, yeah, I think it was. I think Mike is a phenomenal rapper, but when I first met him in 2005, it was for an interview for The Source. And I hung up the phone after a series of conversations with him, and I'm like, I want this guy to win. Like, I want this person to be great because there's such a great representation of what I love about hip hop, which I think speaks to your point. And he's that. I think in some ways, West Side Gun is that, if you listen to him. And I think that David Banner was always that for me. I think David Banner, the person, is worlds better than David Banner, the rapper sometimes. Producer, he's pretty great. But yeah, I'm rambling a bit. But
I think Mike is an elite MC too. Like, don't be putting words in my mouth. Like, in case this gets back to Mike, I'm gonna go on record. I think he's an elite MC also. Just like I think Snoop is an elite MC. I think Ice Cube is an elite MC. Chuck D and Tupac, they're all elite MCs. What I'm saying though is I don't think that when it comes to technical lyricism, that they stand with a Royce, a Kendrick, a Black Thought, just a super lyrical cats, and that's no value judgment against either one. It's just a description of how they rap,
Maybe so. I still Mike can chop. Like, he can do the fast rap thing very well. And that's maybe what I don't get as much with RTJ as his old solo catalog, which I feel like has, been eclipsed a bit. Not a huge concept guy.
Or an Andre. Would you like
no.
Andre? You know what I mean?
But here's what I will say, and I stand by this 100%.
Mike is more big boy than Andre, is what I'd say.
Word. And that makes perfect sense, especially given, who kind of vouch for him. But if there's 10 active rappers right now, 10 active MCs, I'm not including your Big Daddy Kanes and your Rakims, but 10 right now, Mike is in my list. And I say that objectively too. Like, it's not just because I love his music. I think in terms of what makes great rapping right now, Killer Mike, top 10,
Oh yeah, no, I'm with you.
Okay,
right now, Mike is in my top 5.
Okay, now you're one up me
right now. Come on, man. Yeah, exactly. Speaking of which, another rapper that is super lyrical that you don't like, and you get mad every time he drops a project because I'm gonna put 2 or 3 joints in the playlist.
Saw this morning. I was like, oh.
And you're gonna have to listen to it for a year. I thought about you yesterday. I was like, damn. I was thinking you're gonna be mad. Jake is gonna be mad. So, but it's Logic. First of all, what's your beef with Logic, man? Why you?
Listen, man. I have no beef. Honestly, I know we're two guys that talk a lot about places we used to work and the things we've done for people. 2011, Logic had built a name organically for himself. But again, I was leading Hip Hop DX on the editorial side, and Young Sinatra 2 dropped. I mean, independently, and I was blown away with some of the videos he was putting out, and we were right there with, maybe ahead of, maybe right behind, but Two Dope Boys and the like. But I believe that I was a ground floor media Logic supporter. I genuinely, especially in the first half of the last decade, like the guy. I root for him. You put me on to everybody, you know, and through the exact exchange that you're talking about. Like, I got to a place where Logic would release an album. It felt like every other week, and I was just like, I'm cool. And you made me really realize in what I think 2017 that Everybody was a remarkable release. But I do think Logic does too much. I think here's a point of why I've changed the channel on Logic personally. You know, Logic made all of this noise a few years ago with the suicide prevention song. You know, I've lost a number of people in my life to that. It's a very personal issue. I thought it was great to see the MTV performance. I think it was all of these things. Happy to hear the song on the radio. And then a year later, he does a punchline that makes fun of that song and tells his haters to kill themselves. That is why I can't really fuck with Logic. I'm just like, yo, dude, what is your constitution? So now I think why you're bringing this up is Logic is toying with retirement, but it also comes with a deal involved. So you want to catch us up to speed?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to touch on that a little bit.
Okay.
You know, I'm kind of with you. You know, I've been a big fan of Logic too since those Young Sinatra days. I remember the first time I heard, I think the song is Young Sinatra, and he uses that Milk Bone sample.
Yep.
You know, the one that
Keep it real.
that Big L and Jay freestyled on too.
Yeah.
And you know, that song blew me away. I loved it. You know, I've always loved the sample, so he had me there. But then he was spitting, you know, and he's another dude like, you know, I put on TV for the first time and big supporter of back in the day. But over time, you know, even with Under Pressure, I thought it was a great album, like really phenomenal. But I also thought it was really kind of Kendrick-like. You know, he was using a lot of the same kind of like vocal distortions and harmonies and stuff like that. And it felt very much like a rip on Kendrick style. But still, it was cool and like it was well done. But then over time, he got kind of gimmicky and the big, you know, like just kind of like throwing in like, you know, cadences and syllables for the sake of it without really saying anything. You know,
And jumping up and down in the videos as he's doing it and smiling.
Yeah. But at the same time, while he would do that, he would also have songs that touched on really deep issues. You know, suicide, but also like being, you know, depression and, you know, being biracial and like, you know, the scrutiny that he faced and things like that, and his marriage, all those things, which I thought was dope. You know, so I always like artists who put their truths out there. But then it starts to become what felt like a trope, you know, I think to your point. And, you know, I wasn't really sure if he was sincere in those things. But I do think that his ear for beats is impeccable. And the funny thing is, the other thing I was thinking about you with these songs on the playlist is I know Jake is going to skip these, and some of them he's going to question why I even put them on there. But I would say for all 3 songs that I put on there, there's a beat change in the middle. Mm-hmm. And when it shifts to that second beat, oh man, it's a whole different level. Like his cadence is different.
And he self-produces a lot. I mean, I'll shoot Logic bail in that regard. Like, we spend a lot of time praising your Kanyes and your Cools and your different people, but Logic with his partner Six has made a lot of his best stuff, you know?
Yeah. So he's so in the pocket. So I would encourage you.
I will.
To listen in full a couple times.
Damn. That's like court order community service, man. No, I mean, it's cool. And listen, go ahead.
But so you talked about the deal. So, you know, simultaneously with announcing that this is his last album, you know, he goes from Under Pressure being the first to No Pressure being the last one. He said he signs a deal with Twitch, a live stream deal. And it's rumored to be, I think, you know, a 7-figure deal or something like that. He used it to premiere this album first, and like he had some very emotional, you know, exchanges with fans where he thanked Kendrick. Why are you laughing?
No, man, go ahead.
Why are you laughing, man?
it was, yeah. I mean, it was get the vibe. I did watch it. I'll let you finish though.
So yeah, he had an emotional, really emotional exchange with the fans over Kendrick.
I think his wife was cutting onions in the other room. Like, I mean, I'm sorry, but like Like, how do you? Those are
You
good
think
tears, man. Those
you
are.
think Cole, you know, so I think that it seemed to me that he is at least sincere in his belief that he's done. So I don't even understand the Twitch deal, because if that's the case, I guess he says he's an avid video gamer too. So I don't know if he's literally just going to be on there playing video games or what it is, but
Yeah.
he signed this deal. But like, okay, so bringing it back around though, do you believe that this is the last album or last music we'll hear from Logic?
No, and that's it too. First of all, I feel like Logic has toyed with retirement before, never to this level of grandeur. Lupe Fiasco is another artist that I really respect, especially early in his career. He dropped an album this weekend too, who's toyed with that so many times, and I know that excites a fan base. But I always look at it as it's a bit conniving to some fans too. I don't think this is the last Logic album. I applaud him on the Twitch deal. He's been one of these artists from early on that's, even on his artwork, video gaming is an important part of his upbringing and his story. That's a great thing. There's a lot of people that relate to that. So it's cool. I never knew what Twitch was until, 7-8 years ago, Mers, who's another gamer, was using it, and later he put me on to that's a great way to connect with your fans as a pastime. So I have no doubt it'll work with Logic, but this isn't the end. If it is, I'll bet you on this podcast a drink of your choice.
Okay, I think you owe me 3 now too, man. This pandemic is helping you in that regard.
Okay.
But yeah, well, I agree with you. I think the likelihood of this being his last album is 0%. Like, I don't think there's any chance. Certainly not new music. But that being the case, we've seen this happen like time and time again. In fact, I can't think of a single rapper who has said that he's retiring, or she, who's actually stuck to it. Not one. So that being the case, why do you think that artists continue to even say this? Like, I mean, it just doesn't.
It's the dumbest thing. I mean, to me, like, I think the only thing that we've come close, you see the dog in the background.
Yeah,
I know you like
love
that.
Theo, man. I see every time he makes an appearance, it makes me super happy. Yeah.
It's like the cameo. 3,000 technically, but he never went and did a whole campaign for it. I mean, the biggest one was Jay, and I think we all, because we treat Jay seriously, like, didn't, but then he was dropping these fire features after the Black album and these like Lucy's, like Dear Summer. I mean, Too Short, Master P, Scarface, The Game. It's like the lowest form of album hype. And I don't believe it from anybody. It's just never been done successfully. And apart from Jay, I just don't think that artists leave on the proper note. The Black album, if Jay never came back, man, I mean, it would have been a disservice to the great music he's released since then, but he went out, with emphasis. Other people,
this game 6, like, pause, at the free throw, like, that's it. That's his MJ moment. Yeah.
Or as a Steelers fan, Jerome going to the end zone in 05 and never hitting the field again.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just it's corny to me. And I will check out the Logic album. I know he's a good dude. I know, and I've heard No ID was really involved in this one. And I know that No ID was instrumental in bringing him to Def Jam. It's weird to me, though, like every artist on Def Jam these days seems to have these like same sort of like ploys around an album, Big Sean, Logic, just down the line, there's always something. And I don't know, but.
Well, listen, so let's take him at his word for a minute, right? Let's assume that this is Logic's last album and the last music we'll get from him. If that's the case and he's really retiring, where do you think he ranks in terms of MCs from the past decade? So let's give him 2010 to 2020. Do you think he is a top 5 artist in hip hop?
No.
From that? I mean, you don't, because like commercially, I would say that he's probably in that range. He's probably top 5, top 10.
Top 10. I agree with you 100%. He's had several number 1 albums, you know.
So would you put him top 10?
No, even. I mean, you've presented me as a hater, and I know I've made a few jokes that probably cement that as such. I don't. That's for humor's sake. I think he's top 20 in the decade, and I think he's in the high, like in the low teens, like 12, 13, 14, somewhere in there. but I don't even think top 10. If you're looking at the entire space of rap and hip hop, I just don't. I
So
don't.
you would put, so if he's in there commercially, but not overall, that means that you think that some people artistically transcend him,
Yeah,
even though they don't have the same commercial success. So then you would put
absolutely.
like a Rhapsody, like a Mike, a Freddie Gibbs, like people like that in there ahead of Logic.
Yeah, I would. And here's the thing too is, Logic has a devoted fan base in the same way that Tech Nine has a devoted fan base, in the same way that Jedi Mind Tricks, has a devoted fan base. But apart from the suicide prevention song, can you name um, 3 or 4 like Logic songs that really resonate, or think that if you were to get a gathering of 10 hip hop fans that they might know? And I ask earnestly.
Dude, I'm the guy who has had at least 3 Logic songs on our playlist for the last 2 years, and I can't name a single one of the songs
There
on
you
the
go.
playlist.
And
Yeah,
that's just it.
yeah.
And that's like the French Montana Kendrick debate. Logic has achieved a cult following. And I think that, again, it makes a lot of sense to go to Twitch, where the same people that devour your music and hold it in the highest regard can build with you in a platform that's really 360. But in terms of the hip hop conversation, no. And that being said, I think Everybody was absolutely a top 10 album of the year. It dropped 2017, if I'm not mistaken. We put it on our list. You kind of put me onto that. But exactly to your point, so a lot of times you and I, back before Corona, we go out, grab dinner or lunch or something, and you might order an adult beverage, a drink, and I'd be like, I'll have the same. That is Logic as a rapper. He's copied a lot of other people's, from Kendrick to 3 6 Mafia to Drake to Lupe. He's been that guy that's been very chameleon to me. And that doesn't negate his story. You touched on 3 important points of it, but I just like a little bit more originality in my music.
You know, I think part of what got me too was before, he talked about it a little bit on Under Pressure, but he was just like over the top about it on Everybody, which is his biracial heritage. And, listen, not in any way dismissing what he's gone through. But, him dropping the N word and things like that, he presents as white. I don't think anyone who did not know his story would not think that he was white. He was blonde hair, blue eyed, and pale. And there's something about, him talking about his struggle, as a black man that like is, I don't know, it's a little bit strange to me. You know what I mean? There's something about that I think kind of like, I don't know, it didn't sit well with me because, I can see him, I could see the flip. I could see him wanting to embrace his blackness and being, chided and, and dismissed in the black community as not being black. And, but like the other part, him experiencing oppression by whites because he's mixed, that part I don't see, and I think that's the part that kind of like that made me think, is this real, or is this just like, something that is a cool narrative for a story?
Yeah, I mean, his talking about that has become an internet meme. I mean, I don't know if you've seen that, but it's honestly like a viral joke to a lot of people. And even, Joe Budden, who was very, condemning of Logic and then has since apologized. It was interesting, in one of this week's podcasts, he called him a white rapper and compared him to Russ and some other people, which was weird for me because, again, I'm a white guy. I'm out of the conversation. But that's, that's just it's just an odd dynamic, odd aesthetic.
Yeah. So more new music that's coming, and you put me up on this. I had not read about it, but Black Thought has got an album coming out on Friday,
July 31st, yeah.
and it's gonna feature Schoolboy Q, Killer Mike, and Pusha T. What do you expect? And this is the one. This is produced all by Sean C. Or
It is. So yeah, I mean, this is exciting. There's been a single out. I don't know if you had a chance to hear it. Thought versus Everybody.
Yeah, I heard it for sure. I think it's super dope.
Yeah,
and the video is cool too.
So yeah, this is the third in the series. The first one was with Ninth, second one Salam Remy, and now Sean C. Yeah, this is great. He did have a conversation with Sway that I haven't watched that really breaks down the album. That's one of the things this week that I'm meaning to. But I look forward to it because the other two albums haven't been very guest heavy. I mean, he had Rhapsody on, on there, and he had, Tish Hyman also on there on the singing side. But yeah, this could be good. And the fact that it's Sean C is really interesting to me. Sean does not get the name brand recognition as, one of these great hip hop producers, but he most certainly is. Co-produced Can't Knock the Hustle for Jay-Z, did a lot of the American Gangster album also for Jay, and some great stuff with Eclipse, Kool G Rap and Big Pun's collab. So I don't know what to expect sonically because Sean C is one of those versatile people too, sort of like Cool and Dre.
Yeah, I like the song. I don't think I liked it as much as I did some of the stuff he had on Salam and
I agree
the
with you.
Ninth projects. Is a little bit more discordant. I like the melodic stuff. You call me an R&B dude. But we'll see. I think it's going to be interesting, and I think those I think him and Q and him and Pusha, those are interesting choices. First of all,
Yeah.
just like Black Thought talks about such different things, in his music than they do. So to be curious to see if Q is gangsta and Pusha's doing the coke rap, because that's very different.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
or if he brings something out in them that we don't typically hear. But I'm looking forward to hearing those records for sure.
I really am too. It's interesting. I mean, the first one with Ninth and this one dropped in summer, and then no one expected at the end of 18 that the second one, with Salam dropped the same year as the Ninth joint. I agree with you. And Black gave me truly one of my favorite verses of the year in his feature with Apollo Brown and Shay Noir. It's a quick 16, if that, but Black Thought, I truly believe that right now he's in as good of a stride as he was even in the Funk Flex year. So I'm really interested to hear. I would love if Sean C has like some sample budget there. I would love to just have a different sonic texture than we got with Salam and Ninth, even though I enjoyed both of those projects. So yeah, I know in our next episode we're going to be talking about that one.
Yeah, and this one came out July 7th. You had it in the document a while ago, and I don't know how I missed it, but like the Benny the Butcher, Deal or No Deal.
Yo, yeah.
That joint is so rugged too, man. That was really, really rugged.
That's my favorite Benny record in a minute. I love it. I've kept it on heavy rotation, and it's that sinister Interstate 95 dope boy rap, even though 95 doesn't run through Buffalo. And what's interesting too is it's him and Derringer, which I love to see. I mean, everybody's been so excited about the three Griselda artists, branching off, working with different people, all these different producers. I just love, especially with Benny Derringer. Like that formula to me is like J. Rue and Premier. Like I don't need a whole lot of other looks than that. And that was just bread and butter, the Butcher.
Yeah, I agree. We talk about how much material Benny and Gunn and Conway put out, but like if you step back and think about the fact that so much of it is produced by Derringer,
yeah,
like I don't know of a more prolific producer than that guy right now. And
no.
I think he is the best sound for all three of those guys.
Yeah, and I mean, it's cool in a way because I think Derringer's kept it close to the chest. I think he's produced some other artists that are part of that aesthetic and part of that movement, but he hasn't necessarily done like the Alchemist thing of like, I'm going to give beats to all these different pockets in the hip hop community. Also, I mean, not to get caught up in the politics, but it was cool to see this single come on Griselda. It's almost like Motown back in the day when you had Motown and Tamla and all these different subsidiaries, but like these artists drop and, I always expect Benny to just be BSF, his own Black Soprano family, which is where he put out, the Plugs I Met last year, and boom, here we are, Griselda. So it's just cool. Those guys keep things exciting and they keep super fans and novice fans all asking questions and engaged.
Yeah, so COVID has delayed things in other realms. It's delayed movie releases and sports and TV and as anything you can think about. And I have to believe that even though it doesn't seem like it should have been the case, because artists are recording at home now more than ever and can send files and things like that. Typically the summertime for hip hop is when things really heat up, and starting in June. And it feels to me like that kind of what we would expect like beginning of June is now starting to percolate, starting maybe 2, 3 weeks ago, or maybe even with Juneteenth.
Yeah.
So man, I'm anticipating over the next several weeks just like a slew of great music. You know, the playlist I put in, I think probably 20 new songs in the last like 3 weeks or so, and I'm excited. I'm really excited for what's coming up.
Yeah, you mentioned the Joey 3-pack. Static Selector, is on at least 2 of the 3 songs. He did Shine, the record you brought up, and I've personally wanted to see more as we talk about Logic. Like, there's been times where I feel like Static came into the game as kind of like a bit more imitation than I liked with Premier. Maybe Alchemist, he's really stepped off into his own. And Alchemist, and this is not new to 2020, but in the last 2 or 3 years, Static Selector has been making some great production. So there's that one. Blue in Exile. Did you get a chance to listen to their Miles album?
I haven't yet. But it's based on Miles Davis, or is what's the
It
Miles
plays
Davis?
it plays a role in that too. I mean, Blue has always been a big fan of jazz, as is Exile. But this includes True and Livin', which was a song that you had put in our playlist, I think after, me and Amanda maybe got behind it, even in 2018. So this album has been taking real-time shape, but I know everyone is always hung up on Below the Heavens. And they've, put out some other albums since then. Give Me My Flowers Before I'm Dead or something like that. And then they had kind of like a Below the Heavens inspired prequel sequel. But these guys are in good stride together. Blue is an artist that I feel like really wavered 5 or 6 years ago, artistically and personally. Like, he had some social media weird outbursts that people may or may not remember. But over the last year and a half, I feel like he's in a great place. And this album, if you're one of those fans that looks back on Below the Heavens with reverie, check this one out. That's a good one too.
So you would put this at number 2 because they've released it, a project or 2 since then. You would put this as number 2
Yeah,
to Below Heavens.
and it's hard to count like the prequel that way. I mean, we at AFH got really behind that. Of that. Now, that being said, I have a caveat. My favorite Blue album is a joint he did called Johnson and Johnson.
Yeah.
In 2008, and to me, it was on an underground label. Blue wasn't even in the title, but to me, that was his ultimate moment. But that being said, I mean, Blue's put out 3 albums at least since the beginning of 2019, and they are some of his best work in a long time.
All right. Well, I'll listen to that, and I'll be adding to the playlist for that as well. We made a number of references to it this time. Just a reminder to people that is in the description, the link to the playlist, of all of our podcasts, so you can check that out and definitely hit subscribe too if you made it this far and like what we talk about.
Yeah.
We're at that time, man. So, or you got anything else, or?
Yeah, I mean, just in real quickness, I think we should couple things. Odyssey, who's an artist that I feel like we've always been on the front lines, has a new project, a new album. A project sometimes seems dismissive. The Odd Cure. It's the first time in a while Odyssey's not done something with Mellow Music Group. I don't need to I mean, he hasn't necessarily spoken on that, but this joint is really, really good.
So it's out now?
Yeah.
I got it, because that guy, he's one of my favorite dudes. So
another person that really makes a strong case for albums, even though Odyssey has always been about the EPs too and the singles and all of that. But yeah, check that out. The Odd Cure, No Skips and Shoot Your Shot were the 2 songs that I really have bonded with a lot. Like I said, I haven't listened to Lupe yet. It's a really short EP. Need to check it out. And then the other thing that we should definitely talk about, because he's so important to you and me, is Biz Markie. Who is currently in the hospital and has been in there, as we understand it, for several weeks.
I dropped that in. The article that I read talked about it being diabetes complications, which, is very serious. We all know that we lost Phife Dawg to that. And so, when I read that, at first my natural thought was COVID, but, for it to be something else, reminder, one, that there's all sorts of serious stuff going on. And, I was reading that the number one killer in the country, if not the world, is still heart disease, related to just poor like eating and health, and so and that is a contributing factor to a lot of these deaths in COVID too. But yeah, man, Biz is incredibly important. Another one of those artists who started off MC and producer, but has had a second kind of career like Lord Finesse as a DJ and become incredibly important. Very much on that same like celebrity DJ circuit that D Nice is on. And so yeah, we want to send best wishes to him for sure.
Biz is so interesting to me. I mean, I was 10 years old. I was obsessed with In Living Color. People never talk about this, but in the final swan song of In Living Color, Biz was a featured. He wasn't in the opening, but I feel like when you got to the show, it would be like featuring Biz Markie as an actor, like as a comedian. And, he was instrumental to Redman's career. He's been, just done so much. And I had forgotten this. Hip Hop DX reminded me in their report, but Biz has lost a lot of weight since he was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. He's tried to take care of himself as best he could. He's there's legendary stories of Biz, like he literally loves candy. So I wish him the utmost. I always tell the story. Year 2000, I was working at Burger King, and I was offered to go to the Spit Kicker concert or the Up in Smoke tour, as we talk about Snoop. And I decided Spit Kicker, which says a lot about where I was in year 2000. But it was Reflection Eternal. It was Pharoah Monch, if I'm not mistaken, Common, De La Soul. And the opener was Biz as a DJ. And to this day, I mean, I was 16 years old. It was in my love affair beginning stages with hip hop, but one of the best DJs I've ever seen in my life. Have you ever got to catch him live?
You know what? Have I caught Biz live? I've seen him DJ before.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I saw.
Well, that's what I mean.
Like, yeah. I've seen him DJ. Yeah, I'm trying to think about I've seen him perform or not.
Yeah, okay.
I might have seen him perform too, but I don't think so. I think I've just seen him. I've just seen him DJ, which was dope. Really dope. Yeah.
Really important triple threat. Great artist. So yeah, he's definitely on the mind. And yeah, that's it's been a busy week. And then last thing, I'll just ask you, because you're a bigger boxing fan than I am. I'm gonna go out on that ledge. Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. back in the ring. What do you think of that?
First of all, well, I mean, they asked Tyson. It's supposed to be an exhibition match, 8-round exhibition. I think it's September 12th, something like that. And people asked Tyson if it was going to be like, just fun and games. And he was like, "Yeah, I do. I go hard in everything that I do." And so, now I can see that. First of all, I'm surprised because I watched this interview with Mike, the one where he interviewed Eminem, and he was talking about what just a dark side boxing brings out in him. Like it turns into an animal, in his own words, like a monster, and the kind of person that he would not want to be. So I'm surprised that he would put himself back in that space, especially at the age of 53, when it seems like he's really settled in nicely, and Roy Jones too. Like clearly, I'm wondering if it's just strictly about the money, but dude, like, I mean, he's hard and he can hit hard enough, I'm sure, still to like really hurt someone badly.
You talking about Roy or Mike?
Mike for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the video of him training recently, but like,
yeah, I saw it. Yeah. It looked like Rocky beating up on those like carcasses. So I just hope neither one of them gets hurt, but I'll definitely be tuning in. How about you?
Yeah, I do want to watch that. That'd be fun. And I know Tyson's, traditional career in boxing didn't end the way it should have. So this doesn't, replace that, but it would be cool. I'll be rooting for Mike. How about that?
Yeah. You think there's any world, like, let's say that they could go up and down in weight respectively, but do you think that Floyd Mayweather would ever take a fight with Mike Tyson, even at 53?
Man, take my money. I mean, that would be and boxing might need something like that. I mean, I know it's not through the traditional channels. I don't know. Floyd just seems like one of those down for whatever guys. So
I mean, that's $100 million payday probably for both those dudes.
That would be huge.
Yeah,
that'd be huge. That would be interesting. There's a senior circuit in golf. There's the big three for the NBA. It would be dope. But like, more importantly, though, to your point, jokes aside, like, I don't want to see anybody get hurt.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, what's your song of the week?
Stay in the Dreamville camp. I'm going to give it up to Loot. You talk about the playlist that's on there. He has a joint called Life that has just been in the heaviest of rotations for me.
Yeah, that album, like you sent me that song a couple weeks ago, and it sent me back on a like in a rabbit hole of loot. And I listened to, I think I added that joint, and but I listened to like his two projects before that just back to back, which were
And
both
you're a big fan
incredible.
of Getting Every Dollar, the GED record too. Yeah.
Man, that guy. So I mentioned him earlier. I'm gonna go with Post Malone. Like a year ago, my life changed like extremely, as you know better than most. And I heard Psycho today, and it took me back to shortly thereafter my life was completely transformed, and like everything is on the upswing in a really great way. And that song was an integral part of it. So took me back to a
That's
good
dope.
place. So yeah.
I always like when that happens with music. Well, man, we busted it up, and hey, I look forward to next week. We're gonna have a lot to talk about. Busy week of music.
Yeah, no doubt. And I'm gonna reach out to some people, maybe get some cool guests coming up next in the next couple weeks too.
Dope, man. I look forward to it. Yo, enjoy the rest of your day.
Man, you too.